Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather, or actually not the hazardous weather graphic, fire danger map here. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere in the state for tonight or tomorrow. So right to the fire danger here, and extreme fire danger right up in the general area here where it was yesterday. Not much change, expanded a little bit there of the Yukon Flats area, as well as the upper Yukon Valley. Actually, this is kind of extended farther down to the south, and a little bit up here over the Noatak Valley now. Kind of an increase there from what I saw yesterday. Otherwise, the remainder of the state in pretty good shape, considering what it could be this time of the year if it was a lot hotter and drier, which it has been in past years. Anyway, satellite imagery showing the sunrise here and the illumination of the clouds, as well as areas of clearing. You see clear there for St. Lawrence Island, on up into the Seward Peninsula, and it looks like in toward Kotzebue here in the last frame, and the northeast Gulf Coast in toward Yakutat. Big area of clear skies there, kind of extending back in toward Prince William Sound. And generally cloudy, though, here over southern Alaska, and you can see the convection building up again with thunderstorm activity back through the Kobuk Valley from the western Koyukuk back through here, some more in this area, and much less in the way of convection here east and south of the Alaska Range. But looks like some pretty good buildups going on down in toward the coast of northern Bristol Bay. And a few breaks out over the Bering Sea. Looks like one is pretty close to St. Paul, St. George area. Could have seen some sun there. Otherwise, pretty well socked in here across the Aleutians, all the way up into the Alaska Peninsula. And high pressure continuing to control the weather out over the Bering Sea. And so anywhere, look for winds are light, but low clouds, fog, drizzle, distinct possibility. Again, with a few areas of clearance scattered around. Panhandle seeing rain, system, and moisture coming up as a jet begins to reorient itself, getting into a pattern change here with an upper level low. Is going to be tracking northeastward toward the eastern North Gulf Coast over the next couple of days, and that's going to cause the jet to become more southerly and actually aim it right at the southeast coast. So there'll be a couple of surges of moisture associated with it. This is the first one. Brought rain that spread northward, light rain in the north there, or the central southeast coast. Didn't look like it was much farther north here at mid-afternoon than Sitka, possibly over toward Petersburg, Wrangell, and then southward with amounts ranging from 0.04 of an inch at Sitka. That's a 12-hour amount, again ending at 3 o'clock this afternoon, to 0.52 inches at Annette or Ketchikan. Now I forgot which one, but anyway, so there are definitely heavier rainfall amounts down to the south and lighter and more scattered as you head north there to nothing at all as you get in toward the Juneau area, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay. And again, some sunshine broke out here along the North Gulf Coast from Yakutat, possibly even Elfin Cove back in toward Prince William Sound. Lower clouds down over the Gulf here, on and across Kodiak Island, cloudy day there. Showers starting to develop over the western Alaska Range, but not like they had been. And again, thunderstorm activity to the north here. Could possibly get some of the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, more likely up along the Alaska Range, and then back through here it was forming today, and along a weak thermal trough right through this location. Otherwise, partly mostly sunny over the Yukon Flats area with temperatures rising into the mid to upper 70s. In some cases, like Chalkitsik and Beaver had afternoon temperatures 78 degrees this afternoon. And in a place known as Fairbanks, Alaska, they were 70-degree weather all the way out toward Caltag. High pressure dominating the Bering Sea. Right on the edge here, the next storm that's going to be edging in toward the western Aleutian areas. I'll start to increase some winds late tonight. High pressure over to the north there. So this is going to be moving rather slowly eastward And it looks like the rainfall won't get into the western Aleutians until probably early tomorrow. Otherwise, no change over the remainder of the Bering Sea, central eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Areas of clearing, especially Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, maybe the Fox Islands, and lots of low clouds, fog, and or lots of low clouds with areas of fog and or drizzle here over the Bering Sea. Optimistically, keep it mostly clear here for St. Lawrence Island, definitely over the western northwest interior. Again, diminishing showers like we've seen last several days here. Thunderstorms winding down later this evening along with the showers, and they persist here along this thermal trough axis from the low over the upper Yukon Valley, kind of a thermal feature there. And otherwise clearing out of the Copper River Basin, staying nice North Gulf Coast, dry on down to Kodiak Island and Cook Inlet. And this system kind of breaks up one trough right through here, keeps some shower chances going over the central southeast coast. Doesn't look like much anything will get farther north than, say, Juneau, and possibly a little bit, get a little north of Sitka, but I wouldn't look for a whole lot. And then the rainfall to the south will become more intermittent and tend to get more showery. But you can see next system already spreading moisture across the Queen Charlottes, and that'll do a number tomorrow, much like you saw today with the rain south heaviest, spreading slowly northward. Probably see more in the north tomorrow, or you will see more in the north tomorrow than what you saw today. Looks like at least showers will break out over the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay area, Klondike Highway on down into Juneau, with again maybe another ½ inch falling in some locations down to the south. And again, thunderstorms kind of restricted along this trough axis here because due to a lack of moisture back to the northwest, except along the Brooks Range there, you can see some thunderstorm activity, Central Range, Anaktuvuk Pass, maybe eastward to maybe Arctic Village. Otherwise, partly and mostly sunny southern Alaska, and just a risk of some afternoon showers developing over the mountainous terrain like the Talkeetnas, but nothing of the thunderstorm variety. And isolated showers there, mostly around the Besna, northeast, or the eastern Alaska Range here, northeast Copper River Basin, and maybe clearing out, maybe breaking out to some sunshine tomorrow at some point in the day, probably the afternoon for Kodiak Island. Definitely dry, winds definitely light, and a weak trough could bring some pretty good showers here in toward Noatak, Kivalina, and Point Hope there. Otherwise, again, not much change out here over the Bering Sea. Looks like gale force winds into the western Aleutians, but not really making much eastward progress here, with the rain staying possibly even west of Kiska Island. So not much effect for Adak and Atka. Might see some sun, as well as the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. No change otherwise in the Bering Sea, with generally cloudy skies. May see more clouds tomorrow here, St. Lawrence Island, and otherwise, really no change. And then the outlook for Tuesday, that front does push a little farther to the north and weakens as it does. This high kind of retreats and has a weakening effect on it. So we'll lose the gale force winds, but it looks like some rain periods with fog will push in across Adak and Atka and make for a wet day on Tuesday there. And that'll extend back along that front that's hung up along or just north of the western Aleutians. Otherwise, high pressure, eastern or northern Bering Sea, southward here across the Fox Islands. Another day some more clearing possible here along the southwest coast like today and probably tomorrow. Thunderstorms again develop, mostly west and north of the Alaska Range, just some scattered isolated showers over the mountainous terrain, south central Alaska. This system, upper level low coming northward, so some of this moisture is going to pull back around to the west, and it doesn't look like it'll get as far west as what I thought it would yesterday, but possibly getting into southern Prince William Sound. Definitely rain, Yakutat, rain periods of North Gulf Coast with patchy fog. A trough brings rain into the central and western Arctic coast there. Otherwise, moving on to low temperatures for tonight, 40s to lower 50s here for the southeast coast, 45 to 50 central interior, 30 to 35 Arctic coast, excuse me, some cases into the upper 20s on the east side, and about 30s there for the Bering Sea, to lower 40s in the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, again, 75 to 80 northeast interior, with 70s all the way down to the southwest coast to Kuskokwim Bay there, and possibly Noatak Valley, and pretty nice, 65 to 75, Susitna, Matanuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, and highs in the Panhandle, mostly in the 50s to lower 60s with the clouds and precipitation, warmest in the north, followed by lows about what you'll see Tuesday morning will be a repeat of Monday morning here. And you can see just barely dropping below freezing in some areas on the Arctic coast now, otherwise 40s to lower 50s here in the interior. and then that followed by highs again, about the same, 75 to 80 over the central eastern interior, 70s all the way down, looks like 72 there at Bethel.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First aviation graphic here for Monday morning. A lot of IFR here over the Aleutians, up to about Unmak Island, northward across the Pribilofs, much of the eastern Bering Sea here, right up along the Yukon Delta coast, and then some VFR here just north of the Bering Strait, and the central eastern Arctic coast, you're back into the IFR zone. Good VFR, just about all of interior Alaska, or is all of interior Alaska, into the northern Panhandle, some IFR here along the east side of Kodiak-Fognak Islands. And southeast coast, IFR down to the south here to start, but that'll change to marginal VFR by the afternoon, with some IFR lingering here, Prince of Wales Island up to about Port Alexander. Marginal VFR, though, advances northward all the way to the border. And then for Tuesday morning, we've got IFR covering just about all of the southeast coast and a fair distance to the west as well, across the Gulf of Alaska, almost to the east side of Kodiak Island. Marginal VFR up into Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast. Another VFR start to the day for just about all of interior Alaska. IFR eastern Arctic coast, and IFR here from the Bering Strait covering just about all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. But VFR here, notice it's out a ways off the coast, not quite to the Pribilofs, but all of Bristol Bay will be VFR. And then for Tuesday afternoon, it looks like that will hold. Marginal VFR kind of creeps a little up the peninsula here on the Bering Sea side, and marginal for the Fox Islands. Otherwise, expect IFR anywhere out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, improving a little bit towards Shimia. And now some IFR just skiffs of along the western Beaufort Sea coast, but notice VFR on the eastern coast and VFR over the interior. Marginal along the east side of Kodiak Island, up along the north and eastern North Gulf Coast, possibly Prince William Sound, and now IFR mostly over toward the border, improving a little bit to marginal VFR, but you can see still areas of IFR right off the coast. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, both another VFR day coming up there for both passes, and Lake Clark and Merrill, same forecast, VFR, both entrances all day long, same forecast for rainy, windy, open, and Isabel and Mentasta, both another VFR day. Good flying for Tanita. Portage starting out marginal here, especially on the east entrance. Some low clouds possibly causing that, and then that'll become VFR sometime during the morning hours. And for Chilkoot and White starting out VFR, and ceilings coming down throughout the day, possibly getting down to the marginal VFR threshold in the late afternoon. Might hold off till evening, but that looks like the trend right now. And for the freezing levels, 8 to 10,000 feet right over the Queen Charlotte Islands there, south of Dixon entrance. So roughly about 8,000 feet here across the southeast coast, give or take, and up the eastern interior. Then you hit the 6,000 foot line there on just north of the Brooks Range, and 4,000 and 2,000 just off the central Arctic coast there. That due to that north and northwest flow coming around the Big Upper High back to the west. They're trying to push some cooler air in, but not really doing that great a job here into the northern interior. And really slack gradient-wise out over the Bering Sea due to high pressure. And for the icing above about 9,000 feet here, just along, and the heavier stuff staying south of the Aleutians, at least through tomorrow, and that's just barely getting up there, probably during the morning hours, and it'll be above the 9,000 foot level. And the southeast coast, pretty good chance of seeing some considerable moderate rime icing, with moisture slipping up over the southern areas, with the light to isolated moderate zones slowly shifting north and a little bit to the northwest. And for the jet stream, we've got this upper level here low tomorrow, south of Kodiak Island. You see the good flow southwest, 130 knots, centered in across the Queen Charlotte, but it's a pretty wide band. And actually that's over the next couple of days will be kind of rotating, becoming more southerly as this low tracks northeastward. And that's definitely a wet weather pattern for the southeast coast. Some of that moisture will get caught up in this upper low coming northward. Might pull it back to the west there, maybe into Turnagain Arm, Kenai Peninsula. And for the 9,000 foot wind flow, high pressure over the Russian Far East, ridging across the Bering Sea into the southwest interior. Westerlies 10 to 20 to the north, northeast 25 to 30 along Kodiak Island, and then the big increase in the winds here, possibly as high as 50 knots over the western Aleutians. 25 central and south coast of the Panhandle. About the same pattern, 3,000 feet with high pressure here, Bering Sea into the southwest. Westerly flow only 5 to 15 to the north. and then the big increase in the winds there over the Aleutians, and therefore look for some increasing turbulence as well. Light to isolated moderate chop below 5,000 feet from west of Adak on out to Shimei and Attu, as well as Sitka on down across Prince of Wales Island.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
And once again, you brought some wonderful satellite pictures to show us and do a little show and tell about. It's just amazing. I can get lost in satellite pictures all day. What did you bring today?
Right. Well, weather satellites, what are they good for? Yeah. Of course, there's the pretty pictures that they bring us. You know, we've got a picture here from April of 2012. Okay. The Sumi NPP satellite, it's what they call a polar orbiter, which means it covers Alaska because we're near the pole. Beautiful image. You can see a storm off of southeast Alaska, the sea ice along the Bering Sea up into the Arctic. A really nice picture, and this is important because it allows a forecaster to see where the storms are, where the ice is, where the clear areas are. You need to know where the weather is now if you're going to forecast it into the future. Exactly. So satellites give us these good pictures. This is called surveillance of the weather. And you know, that same satellite also has another picture from a little more recently, August of 2014, Tropical Storm Iselle bearing down on the Hawaiian Islands. Okay. Hawaii doesn't get hit by a whole lot of tropical storms or hurricanes. Sometimes it does. And here's a picture from the same satellite, the Sumi NPP Polar Orbiter. It shows Tropical Storm Iselle approaching the Hawaiian Islands from the southeast. You can see the storm swirling away there, and then there's the Hawaiian Islands. This is a tropical storm, not quite as strong as a hurricane because we don't see the eye wall in there. This is still a serious weather system. And all of this information comes just from that satellite picture. It's so much information, and it's wonderful to look at. You see the beauty and the awe of nature right there depicted in that weather satellite. We call it a polar orbiter because the satellite flies high over the globe. Maybe we could look here at we happen to bring the planet Earth with us. This is our satellite. A polar orbit flies really close to the Earth, maybe 800 kilometers over the Earth, and goes up over the pole and then back down, and then the Earth spins under the satellite as it goes by. That's in contrast to the geostationary birds, which are much further out. And they don't view Alaska quite as well. So we love those polar orbiter satellites here in Alaska.
So when we're a lot closer, we get much better details and imagery and an idea of a better maybe position of what's going on when it's passing right over Alaska or right over Hawaii.
Yes, exactly right. The polar orbiter gives such a good view of places like Alaska. And because it's close to the planet, there's another aspect of satellites in the polar orbit that is helpful for weather forecasting. It's an aspect that's maybe not as immediately obvious as the pretty pictures that we see. And that is the capacity for the satellite to produce what's called a sounding. That is finding the vertical profile of temperature and moisture in the atmosphere. We've all heard of weather balloons. Weather balloons are launched here in Alaska twice a day at a number of airports, everywhere from Barrow to St. Paul Island to Kodiak, Anchorage and Fairbanks, Yakutat, a number of places. Launch these balloons, and we've got a picture of a balloon being launched at an airport, and the balloon goes up. It's pulling a little package, an instrument package with it that reports temperature, pressure, humidity data back, and we use that information to help feed what are called numerical weather prediction models.
The models.
The models, right. It's a mouthful, so we just call it the models. And these computer simulations, these models are computer programs that simulate the motion of the atmosphere. Well, how does a model know what the future will be like? You have to tell the model what things are like now. And you give it all kinds of information, including information from these satellite sounders. Very important. Just how important are they? We have a recent, comparatively recent study that really brings home, and this is Superstorm Sandy. We have a track image here of the track of Hurricane Sandy. Was down in the Caribbean around Cuba, and then it moved north over the ocean, offshore of the eastern seaboard, and then at the last minute, Sandy made what's called the left hook. It turned hard to the left and slammed into New Jersey. Was a major problem for the mid-Atlantic states, a calamity. It fused with another weather system and became known, this is not an official title, but Superstorm Sandy. It was quite the weather event. Well, the modelers, after the event, there's a group of modelers in Europe. They have a very good model, a frustratingly good model if you're the Americans trying to pursue their excellence. They reran their model afterwards in what's called a data denial study, where they kept everything the same. So this is 6 months after Sandy, but they went back, they reran the same model, they fed the model the same initial conditions, that is telling the model, okay, here's where we think Sandy is, down near Cuba in the Caribbean. Everything was the same as it was in the real forecast, except they didn't let the model know.
No satellite data.
No satellite data.
Okay.
So we're going to put that over here, no satellite data for you. The resulting forecast 5 days out, back when the real Sandy was happening and the model had the satellite data, the forecast was pretty good. We've got a graphic here on the left side. We show the forecast of where Sandy would be, and that's the red bullseye on the left. It's just south of where it actually wound up hitting. Not a bad forecast from this computer simulation, 120 hours out. On the right, you see the same model, but it didn't have the satellite data to help it understand things. And the storm is way offshore. It misses. The forecast is more accurate when the model has the satellite data. So that's the idea today we want to convey is weather satellites. They're important because they show us the pictures of where storms are. We see good examples of this. Yeah, the surveillance right now, it's great to look at those pictures. And in addition, behind the scenes, maybe not immediately obvious, but the models have to have that satellite data for them to be good forecasts. And then a meteorologist uses that information to help everyone with the forecast of where the storms will be in the future.
That is fascinating information that we can look at, see where things have been, because you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. That's that old adage there. But seeing that satellites are actually helping us move forward in the weather information system is pretty amazing stuff.
You bet.
And if you want to check out Eric's satellite images that he's been talking about, whether that's something from today or last week or even much further back in Alaska history, you can easily do that yourself. Go to www.gina.alaska.edu and you can find those images there. Eric, thanks so much for joining us once again. And again, we will join you hopefully again soon for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, where you'll tell us more really cool information about the satellites over our heads in Alaska. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis completed this afternoon, Sunday. Not much change out here over the Chukchi Sea. Still kind of, well, just not much change. And the big change noticed is now there is open water here north of Barrow, and there's open water now all the way across here. So these two have kind of joined. Now there's still brash ice in there, so it's not wide open, but now the open water area has now linked up with the two mostly open water areas there. And for the southeast coast and the winds, southeast 25, small craft advisories on the south coast, east 20 on the north coast, south 20 Lynn Canal, lighter for Stevens Passage, southeast 20 for Clarence Strait. And Tuesday, south winds 20 knots here, most of the coastline except the extreme north coast, southeast 20 there with 7-foot seas. Otherwise 8 to 9 foot seas down to the south. Small craft advisories Lynn Canal, southeast 25 and southeast 20. Big increase in the winds here with gusts 35 knots, gale force gusts in the forecast for Stevens Passage, and south 25 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, light easterlies at 10 tomorrow, seas 2 feet, east 15 for the North Gulf Coast, and east at 10 for Cook Inlet, northeast 10 Kamishak Bay, and northeast 20 with 5-foot seas for the Barren Islands. And the outlook for Tuesday, we've got northeast breeze here for Cook Inlet, only at about 10 knots. It'll extend right on down into the southern inlet and Kamishak Bay, and 20-knot winds for the Barrens out of the northeast, and northeast 25 here on the western North Gulf Coast, turn east at 25 for the Middleton Island zone, and northeast 15 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island on the east side, looking at small craft advisory northeasterly winds there that'll actually extend all the way down to Cape Sarachev on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Lighter winds for Bristol Bay by comparison, northeast or northwest at 10, north at 10 for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and then stays light even into Tuesday, west-northwest at 10 here for Bristol Bay, and mostly northwest 10 or 10 to 15 actually here for the peninsula, and Castle Cape to Sitkinak, and then up the east side of Kodiak, we're looking at 20-knot winds out of the north. Fox Islands tomorrow, winds mostly on the light side, except south of Unalaska Island, maybe 20 knots out of the north, otherwise north-northeast at 10 to 15, and seas only 2 to 8 feet. And east-southeast, 15 to 20, central Aleutians, and the increase here with the gales with that tight gradient in the storm system out ahead of that front. East 40 knots from about Kiska on out to Chimay-Attu, 30 knots, Adak to Kiska. And then for the next day, that whole system weakens and winds back down under gale force now with east winds of 30 knots, southeast 25 from roughly Kiska or Amchitka to Adak and Atka, east-southeast 25 knots. That's good for small craft advisories. And southeast 10 as you approach Nikolsky, and then much lighter here across Unalaska Island. Southeast at 20, and then lighter for Unalaska Island at 10 knots from the same direction. And for the southwest coast, northerlies 10 to 15 knots. Not too bad with seas 1 to 2 feet, and southeast at 10 with 2-foot seas for the Pribilofs. Same thing for St. Matthew Island, northwest 15, St. Lawrence Island, and light westerly breeze in Norton Sound. And then for Tuesday, we've got northerlies 10 to 15 here, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. Northwest 10 to 15 for the southwest coast there across Nunivak Island. Southeast at 10 again for both St. Paul, St. George, and St. Matthew Islands. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, northeast at 10 tomorrow. So pretty light here all along the coast. East 10 knots, central coast all the way down to Cape Thompson. Then it swings around to the southwest from Cape Thompson to the Bering Strait at 15 knots. And then for Tuesday, it swings around to the north at 15. Otherwise, the west side here, westerlies at 20 knots, turns southwest at 20 on the central coast, and then gradually diminish as you head eastward toward Demarcation Point. And for tonight, again, thunderstorms diminishing along with any showers, but they'll kind of stay enhanced here along this trough axis from the thermal low up there over the northeast interior. Clearing out dry, definitely from the southeast interior here, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, on down toward Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, as well as the western and northwest interior. And diminishing rain will be replaced by rain again tomorrow as warm front type weather moves northward here ahead of the warm front in across the Panhandle. Again, heaviest rainfall amounts in the south, but you'll probably even see some showers now up in the northern areas. Otherwise, partly mostly sunny North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet. Afternoon buildups could result in a shower in the taller clouds south of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, look for some thunderstorm activity along this trough axis.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.